Welcome to a NetSuite overview specifically targeted for trading businesses. My name is Millie Bashir. I am the Solution Integration Director at Idilico, a NetSuite solution provider. Today we will demonstrate the core business processes conducted by our trading company, Gill Incorporated. NetSuite is a fully integrated software as a service solution delivered through the web to manage all of your key business functions, including finance, HR, CRM, supply chain, and procurement. It is designed specifically for growing mid-sized companies that want to benefit from large-scale applications without the burden of managing large IT infrastructure. Our demo today focuses on the processes conducted by the supply manager at our trading company. The storyline of our demo today is as follows. Typically, we receive a customer request for quotation in Excel format due to large volume of items. As a trading company, we do not store any inventory. We procure products on an as-needed basis to ship directly to the end customer. The customer RFQ will be used to create a vendor request for quote in NetSuite, known as the RFQ. The RFQ will be sent to multiple vendors for price bids. The vendors will respond to the RFQ through the NetSuite vendor portal. The supply manager will award the items to the appropriate vendor, resulting in purchase contracts. The customer RFQ can be used to create the customer quotation as well, and it will be marked up by the supplier price. Once the quote has been approved and converted to a sales order, the PO is automatically created based on purchase contract. The goods are shipped to the customer directly, the customer's invoice and payment received, and the vendor bill is also received into the system. As we conduct our demo, we will be highlighting the following key features in NetSuite: transparency, how to get quick access to information; efficiency, how to make day-to-day tasks easier; and adaptability, how to make NetSuite your own with point-click configuration. So let's begin our demo. As mentioned in the storyline, the customer sends a request for quotation in the form of an Excel file. Right now, I have kept my products at a limited number. So there are 4 products that are received with the ID, the product name, and the quantity captured in the file. This file will now use to be loaded into NetSuite to create the vendor request for quotation. So let's log into NetSuite. We can log into NetSuite through any browser with an email address and password. NetSuite is a role-based application, which means you will be selectively given access to processes and data which your role within the organization requires. Typically, a user has 1 or 2 roles in the organization, and one of the roles would have been set as the default role. Today, I am logged in as the supply manager. My initial screen is called the dashboard, which is configured specifically for my role. The dashboard is composed of small windows called portlets. These portlets contain processes and metrics that make day-to-day tasks easier by giving quick access to key information. For example, the key performance indicators, graph metrics, reminders, and shortcuts. From the portlets, I can quickly drill down to the transaction level, which gives me complete transparency within the system. So here's the transaction data. I have a sales order that's still pending approval. Let's go back to the dashboard. I can also adapt any portlet to my business need or preference with quick point-click configuration. Let us now go ahead and create the vendor request for quotation based on the customer import file. So here we have a quotation that I started. Let's go through some of the fields that are important. So we have the bid open date and the bid close date. These are the dates within which the vendors can provide their price bids. The effectivity based on date is important because eventually this RFQ will result in a purchase contract, and the effectivity based on date specifies whether or not the purchase contract will be chosen based on the expected receipt date or the order date. The start date and the end date are eventually the dates that the purchase contract will be effective. Let's now go ahead and import the customer file. And here we have the 4 products that the customer requested a quotation on. We can request additional pricing tiers from the vendor. For example, I can ask the vendor to give me 2 prices, one for quantity up to $4.99 and a quantity 500 onwards. I can also specify payment terms. I can also include some special instructions for the vendor. These will be included in the purchase contract and subsequently in the purchase order. In the Vendors tab, I can specify the vendors I wish to receive bids from. It is important to note that the vendor must be on file with a contact email address, and that email address must have access to the vendor portal, as the bids will be conducted in the vendor portal. We can send an introduction in the email that is very customized. Once I tick the email checkboxes and save this request for quote, it will be emailed out to the vendors. So this is my request for quotation. I've kept the bid open date and close date for 1 day intervals so that I can quickly get through my demo. Let's now log in as the vendor to the vendor portal. NetSuite does offer all vendors a free portal giving access to their specific transactional data and limited processing. So here's the vendor portal. So I have limited processing that I can do, and I can only look at purchases, requisitions, and vendor requests for quotes that apply to me. So I'll go ahead and enter the price bid. So I'll offer a 10% discount for quantities over 500. Assuming now that the vendors have entered their price bids and that the bid close date is reached, we can log back in as a supply planner and have a look at the request for quotation. In the vendors tab, we can see that the vendors have responded. The awards tab is available once the bid has closed. And in the awards tab, we can compare the prices that were sent by the vendors. We have many ways to see the prices. We can see by lowest average rate or by different tier prices. We can see by particular vendor prices. We can also compare the vendor prices. So here we can see between the 2 vendors, the average rate, the different tier rates, if there's any minimum purchase requirement, and any payment terms that they have specified different than what I have asked for. Assuming that I'm okay with the lowest average rate, I can go ahead and award the vendors. So the quote has been fully awarded, and if I scroll down to the items, I can see that purchase contracts were created. So based on my criteria in the request for quotation, I can see that the effectibility is based on expected receipt date and the start and end date were as I specified in the request for quotation. We are now ready to enter a customer quotation. Here I will enter my vendor RFQ document number. We will import the items that the customer has sent, but first I will enter my markup. For now, I will mark it up by 25%. And as you can see, based on my request for quotation, my vendor unit price have come up for each of these items, and I have marked it up 25%. When I send it to the customer, the printout will not contain the actual vendor's prices or the markup. Save this quotation. Let's look at a printout of the quotation now. As we can see, the price does not reflect the supplier's original price or our markup. We can email this now directly to the customer, provided that he or she does have an email address on file. Assuming now that the quotation is good and the customer is happy, we can convert it directly to a sales order. The items are all listed as dropship items, so they will be delivered to the customer straight from our vendor. And we can save the sales order. So here we can see that two separate purchase orders have been generated because we did have two separate vendors. Let's have a look now at the purchase orders that were generated automatically. Here's our purchase order. It is to the vendor Computer Systems Limited. There is a link to the sales order and the purchase contract. And the items are coming in directly from the purchase contract. And the item costs are coming in directly from the purchase contract. Going back to the linked page between the sales order and the purchase order, let's have a look at the second purchase order. Assuming now that the vendor has already shipped the product to the customer and notified us, we can go ahead and mark the purchase order as shipped. Once I marked the PO item as shipped, the sales order item automatically comes up for fulfillment. So I can go ahead and mark those particular line items as fulfilled. Similarly, for the other PO, we will conduct the same process. Now, to complete the process flow, we now will have to invoice the customer, and also assuming that the vendor has sent a bill, we have to go ahead and accept the bill into our system. This can no longer be done as a supply manager as he does not have permission. We have now logged into NetSuite as the controller, and in the reminders section of the dashboard, I can see that I have 133 sales orders to bill. Here is the order I need to invoice, so I'll go ahead and invoice now. All the information has flowed in from the sales order, so it is correct. I will not change anything. I will just simply save. Let's go back to the invoice. Let's have a look at the GL impact of this invoice. So I have a total of $38.75 debiting into accounts receivable and the individual amounts crediting into the sales accounts. From this invoice, assuming that the customer has already made the payment, I can go ahead and accept the payment. So here I will accept the payment to checking account for that particular invoice, even though there is another invoice that he needs to be paying. You can have a look at the payment method. I can say he's giving me a check. Enter the check number. Let's look at the GL impact. So the total amount was debited from the checking account, crediting the accounts receivable. Coming back to the dashboard, let's now go ahead and enter the vendor bill into the system. So here we have our two purchase orders. Let's enter the first one. I'm going to save it as is. Let's have a look at the GL impact once we enter the bill. So here we can see the total amount credited to accounts payable and total amount debited between these two different accounts. We can now go ahead and make payment for this bill. So I'm making payment out of my checking account, and automatically the next check number is proposed. It is for the bill for $1,400 USD, and I will save it. Again, going to the GL impact. So I can see my accounts payable is debited and my checking account is now credited. This concludes our demo today. Our aim was to show how NetSuite can be used as an advantageous platform for trading businesses. We started with a customer request for quotation based on our product catalog. This file was imported into the system to create the vendor request for quotation. The vendor RFQ was sent out to multiple vendors, who in turn used the vendor portal to enter their bids. We compared the bids and the best vendor was rewarded. This in turn generated purchase contracts in the system. The customer file and the vendor RFQ was used to create a customer quotation with the margin markup of the vendor price. The approved quotation was converted to a sales order. The sales order automatically generated the purchase orders to the respective vendors using the purchase contract prices. Once the purchase order shipments were confirmed in the system, the sales order shipments were also confirmed. The customer was invoiced and subsequently payment received, and also the vendor bill was received and paid in the system. Let's recap the value proposition of NetSuite. The process between the customer RFQs and vendor RFQs can be simplified for large product catalogs. There's no need to key in individual items. Vendor price bids can be compared and awarded to automatically create purchase contracts. No need to re-enter data. Rates and terms can be pre-negotiated to ensure best pricing. There's no need to sporadically negotiate with vendors. And sales order and purchase orders are automatically linked. There's no need to search through individual transactions. NetSuite was designed to manage all aspects of your organization. You can implement the complete solution now or begin with a startup package and expand your solution later. Idilico can help with all your solutioning needs. We provide a unique combination of NetSuite expertise and business process knowledge in a variety of industries. With our end-to-end implementation services and long-term end-user support, we can ensure your return of investment and process embedment within your organization. We also provide business process outsourcing of support processes such as marketing, accounting, and payroll, allowing your company to focus on its core business without increasing overhead. Thank you for your time and attention today. Please feel free to contact us at info@idilico.com.